Hi, this is Kirk, the bariatric carnivore. Well, can a dozen or so Oreo cookies a day keep your heart attack at bay? And that is the key question, I guess, for the day. This is an interesting study that just came out this week where a Harvard medical student he's a low-carb guy. He's what we call a lean mass hyperresponder. He exercises, he has low body fat, he eats low carb, yet he has sky-high cholesterol. Now, not everybody that eats low carb has sky-high cholesterol, but he did. His was way over 300. And his question that he was asking himself was, could this be because the liver is producing, because I'm healthy and it needs energy? The body needs energy for me to be able to exercise and do these other things. I don't have a lot of body fat for the body to be eating on. So is it producing this cholesterol from the food in order to basically create energy for my body? So what he did was he went to his peer review board and said, look, I want to do an N-of-1 study. I want, full scientific rigor, but I need your permission. What I want to do is I want to eat some Oreo cookies every day to see if that will increase the amount of energy into my body and reduce my serum cholesterol level. And then I'm going to take a washout period where I'm going to go back to my normal way of eating for 6 weeks. And then I'm going to do high-dose statins for 6 weeks. And we're going to see which one does a better job of lowering my overall cholesterol level. And they gave him approval for this N-of-1 experiment, and he did it. And what he found was pretty dramatic. When he did the Oreo cookies, his serum cholesterol level dropped from over 300 down to 111. And that's pretty dramatic in and of itself. But what was interesting was when he took the high-dose statin regimen, his cholesterol only dropped half as much. In other words, by giving himself these extra cookies, that extra energy, the liver was no longer needing to produce the cholesterol for energy transport. And as a result, his cholesterol level dropped in just a few weeks, just by eating Oreo cookies. Now, this is not an excuse to go out and start eating Oreo cookies in order to lower your cholesterol. Remember who he was. He was a lean mass hyperresponder who was eating low carb. And again, not everybody that eats low carb even has a relatively high serum cholesterol level. And the question is, well, why do you have this high cholesterol level? What does cholesterol do? Well, cholesterol is a vital part of your overall system. Its function is used in almost every cell of the body for repair, for hormonal replacements. And it's vital. You can't get along without it, but it's also important for energy transport, particularly for those of us that don't eat carbs, because look, carbs are just a form of energy to different cells. If you're not eating carbs, then what do you need for energy? Fat. Well, fat is transported through cholesterol. And it makes sense that if you have a high need for cholesterol, or for fat, for energy, all over your body, and you don't have much stored body fat, that your body is going to be manufacturing it. And your liver is going to be doing a great job at it. That's what your body does. It's going to take care of itself by eating a proper human diet, and that works really darn well. So don't think that you can do it because you've been eating a normal standard diet. It won't have any effect on you probably because you're already getting a bunch of carbs into your diet. And adding more carbs is not going to reduce your cholesterol level. But from the perspective of this study, it was really fascinating for those of us who eat a low-carb diet that are metabolically healthy, that have relatively low triglyceride levels, relatively high HDL cholesterol, but our LDL levels are high. And this goes along with what Dave Feldman has figured out when he started doing his lean mass hyperresponders studies, that he could manipulate his overall cholesterol level by increasing or decreasing the fat levels right before blood tests. So your cholesterol level changes quite a bit. But that's probably not why you're watching this. What you're wondering about because you're like everybody else in this country who has been watching TV commercials from the statin industry. And remember, statins are $1 trillion drug. That's how much we have spent on statins since the 1980s, trying to lower our cholesterol levels. The question is, does lowering your LDL cholesterol save you from having a heart attack? And frankly, I think the evidence is kind of scant. When you look up how does LDL cholesterol cause a heart attack, you're not going to find an answer to it. You're going to find an associational link. They will show you that there's an association between having a high LDL and heart attacks, but not a mechanistic action. We've spent a lot of money trying to figure out what causes LDL cholesterol to get oxidized and form plaques in the bloodstream. We know that there's LDL cholesterol in plaques in the arteries. These break, and when these break, we have heart attacks. But what is the mechanism of action? And that is really the $1 million question, more than anything else, is what's causing it. And when I look at the data that shows what is the greatest risk factor for having a heart attack, is type 2 diabetes. And it's all the symptoms and parts of metabolic syndrome. In other words, I think the answer to this question, from my perspective, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a PhD, I'm not a scientist, but when I'm looking at the data going, okay, what's the mechanism that's causing LDL to become oxidized and becoming a problem, is the inflammation that's associated with a high-carb diet, eating lots of junk food, possibly artificial seed oils, possibly high sugar, but certainly there's been a change in our diet in the last century and a half that is causing this problem. Because frankly, at the beginning of the 20th century, there were virtually no heart attacks. And people were not eating highly processed food. Lots of sugar was just being introduced to the diet, and vegetable oils were just being introduced into the diet. Smoking was just beginning to become popular back about that time, but there's virtually no heart attacks. Something happened in the 1950s where all of a sudden heart attacks became an epidemic in this country, where we have roughly 600,000 people every single year having their first heart attack. Now, the rate of heart attack deaths has been decreasing as there's been more defibrillators out there, more people learning CPR, and our medical technology has gotten better over the last few years. But certainly not the number of first heart attacks. That's actually been increasing slowly but surely ever since. And that's despite the fact that the rate of smoking has gone down dramatically. Even our cholesterol levels have been going down thanks to, the government warnings on it. I mean, back in the 1960s, having a cholesterol of 200 something was considered normal. That was the normal range. Now they want it down closer to 100. So, there's been a dramatic drop in the amount of serum in cholesterol, drop in smoking, yet the heart attack rate is staying constant. Something else is probably at work when you kind of look at that data from that perspective. So the question is, does cholesterol cause heart attacks? And I look at the data going, I don't think so, because number one, they can't find a mechanism. Number two, was an interesting study done from a UCLA physician who looked at the blood of people who had heart attacks and that were in an LA hospital. And it was a scattershot. I mean, some people had high cholesterol, some people had low, some people had average. And his reaction was, we need to lower everybody's blood cholesterol level. And I'm looking at the data going, I think what you're showing is it doesn't matter a whit whether somebody has what their cholesterol level is. I'm looking at the data going, frankly, that of all the things that seems to be causative for heart attacks, particularly first time, I don't see LDL cholesterol being a nutrient of concern. So the question is, well, does eating saturated fat cause a heart attack? Well, frankly, the evidence keeps showing no. And even the government admitted in 2017 that saturated fat is no longer a nutrient of concern. They're not worried about how much saturated fat you have in your diet because it doesn't cause heart attacks. So I think what we've been worked over, and what I keep trying to tell you, is that, look, the whole system is working against you. I mean, there's $1 trillion statin industry that can do one thing: lower LDL cholesterol. And they have been selling this message to doctors and to the government and everybody else that will listen, and bombarding you with a constant stream of TV ads saying that, oh my gosh, if you have elevated cholesterol, you are going to die of a heart attack, even though they don't have a mechanism for it. Even though I don't think the evidence shows that having elevated LDL is going to cause necessarily a heart attack. What does? Type 2 diabetes. But, we can manage type 2 diabetes, but we can't cure it through a drug. We can through lifestyle. But there's no money in lifestyle changes. There's only money in drugs. And when I keep telling you that the system is stacked against you, this is what I mean. Nobody is telling you how to eat a low-carb diet to reduce your chances of having a heart attack. That works. And you may be asking, well, who in the world knows that, switching to a low-carb diet gets you off of diabetes medicine and reverses type 2 diabetes? Virta Health. They've been studying this stuff now for going on close to half a decade. They keep showing time and time again, you switch over to a low-carb diet, they have a perfectly formulated ketogenic diet, people get off their type 2 diabetes medicine. They reverse their type 2 diabetes. They are no longer considered type 2 diabetic, sometimes in a matter of weeks. It's that profound of a change. But you can't make a lot of money on it because all it means is switching your diet. And if you're no longer eating the low-cost, highly processed foods, you're not taking care of the American economy. There's a lot of money involved in making you as unhealthy as possible. I'm sorry, but you look at the numbers on this stuff. Look at the whole food industry. Look at where our government keeps investing money. Look at the $1 trillion that have gone into statin drugs and not reduced heart attacks a whit. There's still 600,000 people every year that are going to have their first heart attack, despite statins, despite less smoking, despite lowering our overall cholesterol, despite eating less meat and saturated fat. It's just the way it is. I think the only solution is to look at that stuff yourself. You look in this fight for your health. You're all alone in this. Every single one of us is all alone, and you've got to figure it out for yourself. Thankfully, we can all figure it out together. If you know of any mechanistic action where LDL cholesterol, not oxidized LDL cholesterol, but just having large amounts of LDL cholesterol, the mechanism for how that becomes a heart attack, please put it in the show notes. I have yet to find it. I see associations. I see, that oxidized LDL becomes a problem. I see the results of LDL in inflammation that comes from eating a bad diet, highly processed food. But I'm not seeing anything as far as a mechanism where people that are eating low carb and are metabolically healthy have anything to fear yet from LDL cholesterol. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. I try to put out a new message a couple times a week. I will talk to you again soon.